Anyways, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Formula America podcast. We're your hosts, Kurt and Dylan, and today we're going to talk about this Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix, which...
That's not the name. That's not the whole name. What?
Well, I mean, I'm not going to...
Which one was it?
It was the MSC Cruises Formula Del... I don't remember. Anyways, we got to see Seb Vettel back on track. We got to see Max Verstappen winning 2 different races this weekend, and we got one of the most exciting, probably last 10 laps I've seen in a long time. Edge of your seat. Lando Norris trying to chase down Max Verstappen. So overall, I was pleased with the weekend.
It was a good weekend. It was not the most exciting race ever, but there's a lot of stuff happening. And we had Vettel. We had hippie granola Vettel there again doing his thing. He's not my favorite.
That was pretty cool. He did his little run.
Him driving Senna's McLaren was really cool, but his speech and whatnot is just very...
It's not the Vettel that we knew from in the past. He's a softer, much kindler, gentler version of Seb Vettel. I was just watching him drive around the track with those flags, and I was like, please don't drop the flag into the airbox.
Dude, I had the same exact thought. I was like, he's got to have a death grip on that thing. Like,
oh my God.
Holding 2 flags at one point, driving him 93.
The one part I thought was pretty funny was during his run, when you have Lewis Hamilton on a scooter, everybody's running.
Electric scooter.
Lewis Hamilton on an electric scooter, Valtteri Bottas on a bicycle, and Charles Leclerc on a bicycle. Everybody else is running. I heard George at one point turned around. He's like, "You're supposed to be running." And he's like, "When you get to my age, mate," and just zooms off on his scooter. Like, get out of here. Because Lewis, you can run. You can sweat a little bit.
You'll be fine. Did you see Lewis Hamilton? This is off tangent, but I thought he just released it. You know, he owns a good portion of the Denver Broncos.
Yes.
He did a menu food tasting to guess the schedule of the Denver Broncos. Like, they put Cajun food in front of him, and he had to guess that was, New Orleans Saints is when they're playing them. He about threw up when he ate the grits.
Oh, it's slimy.
I'm not a big grits fan, but he was grossed out by the grits.
That's so funny. It's like, for one, he's a Brit. For two, he's a hardcore vegan. So like, they got jambalaya and all this other stuff. That was pretty funny. That was comedic relief. It's good to see him doing something that's actually funny every once in a while.
But anyway, I digress. It was a great weekend, though. We had a lot going on in practice. A lot of people off track, a lot of bitching and moaning about car setups. Like, going into quali was pretty ominous for Red Bull specifically.
Yeah, Max was not happy. Max had multiple off-track excursions. And what we didn't talk about... too. Yeah, exactly. And what we didn't talk about in the build-up was they had kind of redesigned a couple of the turns to the point, not the turns themselves, but the runoff area. So there's a lot more sand traps. And so we saw people going off, and, it was a high penalty for going off the track. Nobody got beached this time, but I think a couple people probably made some damage, Fernando Alonso, on their floors. And so I enjoy it when they have something like that actually penalizes the drivers for going off, rather than after the fact doing all these track limit violations and penalizing them on time that way.
No, I totally agree. I much prefer the physical penalties. It was nice. Like, I was happy, I think, that it wasn't a deep sand trap that people got beached easily in. Like, it penalized you for going off. It was not a fun ride to get out of it, and it destroyed your tires, but you were able to continue instead of just being red flagged. So maybe some tracks should look at doing more of the same kind of sandboxes, because some of those, it's like they hit them and are done. Bye.
Yeah. Like, you're not getting out.
But yeah, it was kind of a crazy practice.
Yeah, it was. And it was, I think I said it in my predictions. I was like, I don't know if this Red Bull upgrades are going to work. And after watching practice and how unhappy, especially Max was, but Checo also, I was like, maybe there might be a chance. But
man, Checo, when we get to the race, a weekend to forget.
Oh, it was abysmal for poor little Checo Perez there.
Yeah, then in quali getting out qualified, knocked out in Q2 by Danny Ricciardo. Like, oof. Oof.
That was one of those where it's like, it could be anybody on the grid, but not him.
Yeah. We had Nico Hulkenberg putting it in P1 and Q1. The Haas's actually looked strong in quali and then totally shit the bed. But yeah, I mean, Nico looked pretty good for a second.
Man, Nico, again, just doing what Nico does on Saturday. And when he put that thing into P1, that was incredible. I think he finished Q1 in like P4 or something like that, somewhere, it dropped down a little bit. But still, for a Haas to be that high. And it's interesting when you got to the race day as well. I think this weekend we got to see a K-Mag that kind of had his tail tucked between his legs just a little bit. There was like multiple times when he kind of backed out of a move where a week or two ago it would have been full send, 100%. Like we're both going to make or crash in this turn. But he definitely tucked his tail a little bit, and you could see he was driving a lot more cautious this weekend. But then after, the initial, him being very cautious in the race, towards the end of the race, we got to see a different side of K-Mag where there was some actual clean, just nice, perfect racecraft passes where he just started passing people and moving up, where normally he's very aggressive, but these were nice, clean passes. So we got to see kind of a different side of K-Mag this weekend.
A mature K-Mag, if you will.
There you go. Much more refined.
A refined Viking. Still a Viking. Yeah, very much so. He got hosed royally by McLaren in qualifying, knocked out in Q1, sitting down at P18 or something. And Imola is so hard to pass on. You knew it was game over at that point for the rest of the weekend. And it was a slam dunk penalty against Piastri, but that just sucked for Piastri after putting it into P2 in quali, ahead of Lando in that upgraded McLaren, and dropping him down to P5. That was really rough.
Yeah, for sure. That one, you could tell that one hurt. Qualifying Lando and then having to start behind him.
Yeah, that was a slam dunk penalty, though, and just kind of sloppy on McLaren's part for not knowing K-Mag was coming up like that. But that really hosed K-Mag. I think Haas could have been on for a decent weekend. Yeah,
and we got to see, and something you spoke about in the preview, just how hard it is to pass at this track.
And except for Sergio. It was pretty easy to pass Sergio, apparently.
He was, I don't know what was going on. It's like every time they looked, Checo was just getting passed. Him and Sargent were just getting passed by everybody.
They were competing for how easy can I get past this? How many times can I get past an Imola? But yes, for everybody else, it was quite difficult to pass.
We got to see that pretty well highlighted with the Oscar Piastri, Carlos Sainz extended battle that went on. And, Piastri was right there, well within DRS range, sticking the nose in sometimes, and just could not get past Carlos. And it just shows, it's tough. There's only
going into that chicane, even if you take the inside line, you end up on the outside line. It's what was it in China? It was the same thing. Like you come around that straightaway, you can be neck and neck. They have that inside line, but as soon as it turns to the outside line, you kind of get hosed. You're so off the racing line. And so that chicane, I think, is what made it so hard.
Yeah, for sure. Man, you're talking about sloppy. What about Williams this weekend?
Bro, they are a preview. They are first on my list on zeros. Awful weekend for them.
Williams has just free-falled from their high last year, and now they're almost back to like the early 2020s Williams. They still are scoreless, super sloppy on the pit stop where they didn't tighten Alex's wheel nut. He had whatever kind of issue
and a fine.
Yeah, and then whatever issue he had in practice where the car just essentially just shut off on him. It's just terrible weekend for Williams. But on the plus side, Sargent did finish ahead of Alex Albon this weekend.
For you're right, he did. He finished in let's see here, scrolling down to the bottom. I'm in quali. That was like he DNF. What?
He got a nice 17. P17.
Okay, yeah, nice. He beat
good for him.
He beat Bottas and Alonso, who did 7 pit stops and never got up out of last place.
Man, yeah, that was just terrible. And at one point, I think Albon did like 4 pit stops in a 1-stop race, and then finally they just like, all right, just retire the car. Yeah, I don't know what's going on with that Williams, man. We need to do a deep dive into that, because from the promise they had last year to where they are this year, it's just been a steady.
They even
slide,
had a little bit of
decline.
promise in the beginning of this year, but it has definitely been a backward slide since then. Like, it's almost like ever since Melbourne, it's just been not good.
Like they got Alex with the old rope-a-dope and like, oh, we're going to be real good. And then he signed that multi-year deal and they're like, psych.
Just kidding. All right, let's talk about this whole Lando Max last 10 laps. I wrote down, because I thought it was funny, and I still kind of stand by it, but I have to eat a little bit of crow. The commentators were talking like 10, 15 laps out from the end. Max was 6 seconds clear of Lando. And Lando started picking up the pace, and he like originally was starting to push a little bit more, and he was knocking off a couple of tenths a lap on Max. He had it down to like 5.5 seconds, and the commentators were like, Max is under pressure. Max is under so much pressure. Lando has this. And I was like, Max is 5.5 seconds clear in a Red Bull, probably driving on level 7 on a track that's damn near impossible to pass on unless you're Perez and Sargent. Like, I don't get where the hype train is for all this. He's under pressure. And then
right.
Lo and behold, though, all of a sudden Lando started chopping off half seconds, and you're like, okay.
He is under pressure.
He is under a little bit of pressure. I think you guys were premature, but he's starting to get under pressure.
Right.
But,
and so what was so interesting is earlier, I think it was lap 24, Max got his black flag for track limits. So while he's having to push, but he's having to push cleanly so he doesn't go off track, because then it's a 5-second penalty. And he's on super old. I don't have it in front of me how old those tires were, but they were super old hard tires at the time. And you got to see earlier in the race when Lando was on the radio and his race engineer, he was like, these other cars are so much faster. And the race engineer was like, but we're saving our tires. We're taking it easy. He's like, yeah, but they're still faster than me. And you finally got to see the payoff at the end, where that little bit of patience at the beginning, now he's able to pick up the pace to where Max is actually getting under pressure, and you're just watching that time click down. That was so exciting. And I just wish there was 2 more laps in the race.
It was, I don't think 2 laps would have made a damn bit of difference. Good luck passing.
That's true.
Catching him as he caught him on the last lap, DRS wide open, and he was still 2 car lengths behind that Red Bull. Like, you caught him. That's only half the battle. I don't think 2 laps he would have been. Maybe he could have, but you watch all the other things and the battles going on. You get feisty Max out front wanting to start battling, not letting him pass. I don't think it would have happened, but it was exciting. Yeah, it was a ton of fun.
That was exciting. All right, so now that we're on to this, let's talk about these upgrades, right?
Yep.
Because we were talking about how Red Bull was bringing their upgrade. Ferrari brought a big upgrade, and Ferrari also got a lot of practice time at this track leading up to it. Let's see. Mercedes brought upgrades. McLaren gave Piastri the rest of the upgrades. I'm interested to see your take on this. Where do you place the cars as far as like the top 3 to 4 cars in order, fastest to, slowest in the top 4?
Red Bull, I honestly think that McLaren is on merit probably close to the speed of Red Bull right now. I think that Max, it highlights how good of a driver Max is. Perez is a great driver. Mexican Minister of Defense, like, damn good driver. He's not putting in the times that the McLarens are, and sometimes even the Ferraris. I think the Red Bull in the hands of Max is still the fastest. But I would put McLaren squarely number 2, Ferrari number 3, Mercedes 4. The Ferraris didn't look terrible, but I think those McLarens outdeveloped them a little bit. I think I'd put the McLarens in number 2 right now.
Yeah.
And I think that we're going to have a whole lot more battles. I don't think Max is going to be as dominant as last year. I think a couple of these tracks are going to start favoring that McLaren a little bit. Or you just get, Max is so good in quali. He's so good at it. Like, he's gotten better. Last year we all thought Alonso had him in Monaco. We're like, here's the chance, right? And so I think it's kind of that same thing where those McLarens and even the Ferraris, if you can get in front of Max and then have a track like that, I think they'll win.
Yeah. I don't know, man. I think I disagree a little bit. I don't think at least this weekend in Imola, I don't think that Red Bull was the fastest car. I think that the McLaren was the fastest car this weekend.
Ask
Not by
any
much.
racer, any real racer, Kurt. Doesn't matter if you win by an inch or a mile.
Exactly. But I will say, I don't think it was the fastest car, but like you said, Red Bull has Max Verstappen.
Yeah.
And so we got to see, I mean, look at what Checo is doing. Checo is a good driver. Granted, he had some issues, but I think that car fundamentally had some shortcomings this weekend. And you got to see, all through practice, Max wasn't happy. They got it a little dialed in for quali, and you saw, or you could hear in his voice when they told him he got pole, like he had to put work in. That wasn't an easy pole position for Max.
He even said had to work for that, or that was after the race. He was like, we had to work for that one.
Yeah. And then, in the race, you put any other driver in that car, and I think we got a McLaren victory this weekend. But that damn Max Verstappen, holy crap, man, that guy is just an absolute beast.
I mean, and so the start of the race, McLaren or Norris and Max were like neck and neck, perfect reaction times. Like they were right next to each other. And then all of a sudden, I don't know what it was about Max's confidence or whatever, but he all of a sudden just pulled out in front going into the first turn and kind of started to sail off into the distance a little bit. And it was like, man, it's Max.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. He is the it factor right now. But I think I would say that McLaren, at least this weekend, was the fastest car. And then I think for P2, I would put Red Bull and Ferrari probably pretty close. I don't know which one I would give it to right there. I think that for me, they're neck and neck, at least this weekend. And then, after that, you got a Mercedes.
The Mercedes is definitely sitting in P4.
Yeah. And now, don't get me wrong. I don't expect it to stay that way. I expect that Red Bull, just like last year, they couldn't get it together for Singapore. This is very track dependent. But I think that at least this weekend, the McLaren was the fastest. I'm excited to see what happens in Monaco, though. Because I
think that we're going to have to start changing up our predictions. It's not going to be Max Pole, Max P1 from now on. I think that there's real contenders for that top step now.
Yeah, it's getting exciting, and it's so early in the season. It's exciting to think of what's going to happen because it's not going to be like a 2023 again. It's not a runaway. They've already lost 2 of the 7 races, and so
and there's chinks in the armor.
We'll see what happens.
See it like it's a ton of fun to watch. Let's get our guitar heroes and zeros.
Sure, because I think these, like we always say, we'll get the other ones off of these heroes and zeros or to the other teams.
Yeah, that's kind of. So you want to start? You want me to start? How do we want to do this?
Yeah, you go ahead and kick it off this week.
All right. I said earlier, top of my list on the zeros is Williams. Awful weekend. Just continuing to slide backwards. Just that horse is pretty dead and shot. Oh, yeah. Number 2, I got Perez. Going off track quite a few times in practice, knocked out in Q2 by a V-carb. During the race, he went from P11 to P8. But he was a free pit stop for the Mercedes behind them. He was so far back. Like both of the Mercedes cars pitted and came out in the same spot. He was so far back there. So just not an awesome weekend for Checo.
Right. Yeah. Pretty bad.
And lastly, I got Alonso. Kind of rough, but awful quality. Knocked out Q1. Didn't do jack during the race. Kind of turned into a development. I don't think that this is anything really against Aston or Alonso, but just bad weekend.
Yeah, and I think we got to see kind of like last year in, I believe it was Spain, when he went off in, I think, quali or something like that and damaged his floor in the rocks.
Yep.
I think the same thing happened. He had, what was that? It was quali. Yeah, it was quali this time too. He went off, he went through the rocks. Or no. Yeah, it was. Because FP3, he put it into the wall, destroyed the car. They got it fixed. Then quali comes around. He has a snap of oversteer in one of the chicanes, goes off through the rocks, probably destroyed the floor again because he didn't get a time after that. And then he started from the pit lane. And yeah, during the race, man, just couldn't really do much. And this is now 3 races in a row he's been out qualified by Lance Stroll.
Yeah.
So All I'm saying, Lance Stroll might be the new GOAT. I don't know. He's
not
out qualifying a
status yet.
2-time world champion. Okay. Oh man. So yeah, I looking at my zeros. I had the same three: Williams, Perez, and Alonso. But I had an alternate, so I will knock Perez out because he was my least zero of my zeros. Yeah. And my next alternate that I will go to is I'm going to say Kick Sauber again, man. Another weekend, 0 points. It's them and Williams just sitting there holding up the rear. 0 points this far into the season. Just anonymous once again. Again, the most brightest thing about the car is the paint. Other than that, there's not much going on.
Yeah, it's like they're competing with Williams with who can do the worst job. I don't even think that we can really give Haas all that much crap anymore because they're doing so much better than those two. And Alpine, like Haas is scoring points, they're qualifying well, like they've got some antics going on, but I'd say they've taken the biggest step forward from the back markers.
Yeah, for sure. All right.
Heroes.
Let's move on to the heroes. Okay, so my first hero, I'm going to give it, I have to. I'm going to give it to McLaren as a whole. Yeah. The only black eye for the McLaren team is Oscar Piastri not getting the word that he had K-Mag coming up behind him in quali. Yeah. Other than that car is from where they started the season to now, in my opinion, being the fastest car for this weekend is incredible. And then, you've got Oscar getting the rest of the upgrades, starting supposed to be P2. I think if it wasn't that for that penalty, we could have had a double McLaren podium this weekend.
We definitely would have had a double McLaren podium.
Yeah, so definitely McLaren. My second hero, gotta give it to the boy Max Verstappen, man. This guy goes from racing right after quali, his 24 hours of Nürburgring sim race started. And so it's a 3-man team. So he was doing 2-hour stints. He finished his last stint, goes to the start of the race, finds out 15 minutes before the start of the race that his team won the 24 hours of Nürburgring, and then just hops in a real car and does it again. It's like this guy is an absolute freak of nature. And I mean, you can't say enough good things about him. It's incredible.
Yeah. Yep. Couldn't agree more.
And then my third one, I'm gonna go. I know you might not approve of this, but I'm gonna go with the granola tree hugging hippie, Sebastian Vettel. I like his tributes that he did this weekend.
They were
yeah. So I think that was cool, organizing that run, having a talk at the 2 crash sites. I think that was cool. Bringing out the car. He's one thing I actually heard, which I hope comes to fruition, is the fact that he has converted Senna's car into running on sustainable fuels now. He's showing that you can run these bigger engines on sustainable fuels, still make the same horsepower. So maybe this could potentially lead to go back to the bigger engines, get rid of the hybrid system altogether because they're just as clean, if not cleaner. Yeah. So hopefully, fingers crossed, that'll lead to some future developments. It'll be a long way down the road, but Sebastian Vettel does get my third hero for the weekend.
That's fair. I've got a little bit of overlap that I don't want to really change. McLaren has, I just kind of, again, hats off. I've also got Max on there. Like, love him or hate him. It's kind of like 2020 Lewis Hamilton. Love him or hate him. The guy's just operating on another level right now. And we see the same car in the hands of a damn good driver sitting down in P8, and Max is still as dominant as he is. Like, incredible. I'm throwing a hero in there that you won't see coming.
Okay. Is it Lance?
Lance Stroll.
Oh my God. Oh, stop the tape. Are you serious?
He's out
I never thought I'd hear it.
And beat Alonso 3 times. Lance started this race. He qualified down in P13 and he finished the race in P9 just behind Checo. He was passing. He'd had a great drive. I cannot believe I'm putting him on here, but I do think he needs to be highlighted. He did a damn good job this weekend.
He really did. And because I was looking at him too, and I was like, should I put him on there? The only blemish I saw was that lap 1 when him and Ocon came together, which, it's lap 1, so you got to give a little bit of grace there. Exactly. But yeah, man, they actually showed him pulling off some pretty good passes. I think it was it Sargent or K-Mag? I can't remember. He passed somebody around the outside of turn 1 into that kind of chicane. And
yep.
Good on you, man. You know what? You gotta give credit when it's due.
Yep, he deserved it this weekend.
Let's get on over to
what?
I didn't think I'd hear you say that. So
I knew you wouldn't. That's why I wrote them down.
Oh, that's funny.
Let's get to these predictions.
Let
me pull up wait one.
I know you've extended your lead, I think, a little bit on this one.
I don't know. It wasn't exactly great.
It was great enough.
So currently I'm at 20. You are at 14.
Okay, not as bad as I thought.
On pole, I had Max.
Yep, I had Leclerc.
The correct answer
didn't happen.
Was Max.
Okay.
P3, I had Lando.
I had Carlos. So no
correct
points.
Answer was Charles. P2, I had Sainz, and I believe you had Lando.
I did have Lando, so I got that one.
Yeah, and then P1 Max.
Yep, I had Leclerc again.
Rookie. Wild card, I had 4 DNFs. That definitely did not happen.
I had a George Russell DNF, which also didn't happen.
So I got 2 points.
Yeah. I would like to say for honorable mention.
How many points did you get?
I got 1.
22-15.
I know it doesn't count, but for honorable mention, I want to say that I did say if it went down to P4, I would put Piastri in P4. And
that's fair.
Piastri was P4. That. I know it doesn't count, but it helps my pride a little bit. So I got that one right.
He should have been P3.
He should have. He should have been a lot higher. But anyways, man, you know what? For a somewhat boring race, it finished out pretty well.
It did. It was
I'm pleased.
Yep. We got Monaco coming up. Probably
we do
somewhat similar unless we get some rain or something. Qualifying rules in Monaco. Should be a good weekend though.
Yeah, actually, now that you mentioned that, you know what? Before we get off, watching Seb drive around in that Senna's old car, you could see the size difference.
Yeah,
from that car compared to the new cars these days. That car was so much smaller. It was like a giant go-kart almost compared to today, where they're almost the size of a single cab F-150.
Yeah,
it is ridiculous.
And they made them smaller for this new generation, right? The last generation was even bigger than these. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah. But all right, well, we'll be back in just a few days' time for our Monaco predictions, since finally we get a double header and none of this like 2-week wait period. So we'll be back for that in a couple days. Other than that, if you like this podcast, make sure and leave us a rating and review. Follow us on Instagram at Formula_America. And look out, we are working behind the scenes. We got a Patreon coming soon as well. So other than that, I think that might be it, Dylan. You got anything else?
That's all I got.
All right, well, on that note,
stay classy, America.
We'll see you next time.